Welcome back to the deep dive. We're getting into some really deep waters today with an ancient teaching. And this one uses, well, just a fascinating and pretty intense metaphor. Imagine being told that everything you experience right now is actually burning. What could that possibly mean?
It's a very powerful statement, right at the core of a key teaching. Our source material for this exploration comes from explanations of the Ādittapariyāyasūtra. Most people know it as the Fire Sermon. It's a discourse attributed directly to the Bhagavan, and we've got excerpts that give us the original Pali phrases alongside some really helpful explanation.
Okay, great. So our mission today, for you listening, is to really unpack this. Why does this ancient teaching say all is burning? What's it supposed to be burning with? And importantly, how is understanding this whole burning situation presented as, well, the path to liberation? This isn't just some historical curiosity, right? It seems like a profound way to look at our actual lived experience. So let's dive in and see what this perspective offers you.
Exactly. The sermon kicks off with this very stark declaration to the monks. Sabhava bhikkhava adite. Our source translates this essentially as all things are hot objects, or maybe more evocatively, all is burning.
All is burning. Yeah, that definitely gets your attention. So what is this all? What's included in Sabha? It can't mean, the trees and rocks are literally on fire, can it?
No, not in a literal physical sense. The source makes it clear that sabha, this all, refers specifically to the realm of our direct subjective experience, how we perceive and interact with the world, and it breaks it down very systematically. It starts with the very tools we use to experience anything our senses. The source lists the 6 sense bases. Kaku, that's the eyes, sota, the ears, ganam, the nose, jiha, the tongue, kayo, the body for touch, and mano, the mind itself. All these, it says, are hot objects.
Okay, hang on. Our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind are burning. That's quite a statement about our basic faculties.
It is. And it doesn't stop there. It extends outwards. The source says their objects, the things they perceive, are also burning. So rupa, visible forms that the eye sees, sada, sounds for the ear, kaṇḍa, odors for the nose, rasa, taste for the tongue, fuhava, tangible things the body feels, and dhamma, mind objects like thoughts or ideas. These two are hot objects.
So not just the camera, but the picture it takes is also hot.
Exactly. And then the consciousness that arises because of that meeting, kakavinya, eye consciousness, the actual act of seeing. So the vimutti, ear consciousness, the hearing, it lists all 6 types. These two, it says, are hot objects. And even the precise moment of contact. Kakasamfaso, eye contact, the instant seeing happens. So samfaso, ear contact, the moment you hear something, and so on for all 6 senses. This very contact is a hot object. And finally, it wraps in the feelings that come up because of that contact, whatever they might be. The source uses this phrase, yampida, upajati vedete sukhava, adukkama sukhava.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means the feeling, the sensation that arises because of contact, whether it's pleasant, sukha, or painful, dukkha, or neither pleasant nor painful, adukkama sukha. Even those feelings, pleasant, painful, neutral, the source says they are hot objects.
Wow. Okay, let's just pause there. That's comprehensive. The sense organ, the thing it perceives, the awareness of it, the moment they connect, and the feeling that results pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. All of it described as hot or burning. It covers basically our entire stream of consciousness, our moment-to-moment reality. But the big question is why? What's making it hot? It's obviously not literal heat. What's the fire here?
That's precisely the next point the source addresses. It asks the question directly. Kena adita, why hot? And this is where the metaphor really unlocks. The text is very specific about the cause of this burning. It says things are hot because of the fire of lust or sensual pleasure. The Pali is ragajina.
Raga, okay. Lust, craving, wanting.
Yes, and also hot because of the fire of anger or malice, dosajina.
Dosa. Aversion, hatred, pushing away.
Right. And hot because of the fire of delusion or passion, mohagina.
Moha. Delusion, confusion, not seeing things clearly.
Exactly. These 3, raga, dosa, moha, lust, anger, delusion, these are presented as the fundamental fires that make our entire sensory and mental experience hot or burning.
Ah, okay. Now this is getting really interesting. So the source isn't saying the world itself is inherently fiery, or even that our senses are inherently bad. The fire is internal. It's our reaction, our craving, our aversion, our misunderstanding. That's the fuel.
That's precisely the interpretation given. These 3 are the primary fires. But the source then adds the consequences, the suffering that inevitably arises from being fueled by these fires. It says things are also hot because of birth, jati, aging, jada, death,
The big life experiences.
Sorrow, shuka, lamentation, parideva, pain, dukkha, grief, domanassa, and despair, upayase. These aren't separate fires, but rather the painful results, the suffering that comes from living life driven by craving, aversion, and delusion. They are the anguish that defines the burning experience.
That really resonates. You know, thinking about how chasing pleasure often leads to pain when it ends, or how anger just eats you up inside, or how confusion makes you anxious. It feels like being consumed by something. That feeling of being burned out maybe isn't just a modern phrase.
It connects that internal feeling directly to this ancient description. The source suggests that feeling is quite literal in a psychological sense, caused by the internal fires of raga, dosa, and moha, and the suffering they inevitably bring about. And there's a fascinating historical layer to this as well, according to the source material. It explains why the Bhagavan used this specific fire metaphor. He delivered this sermon near Gaya, specifically to a group of 1,000 ascetics known as Jatila.
Jatila, yes.
They were distinguished by their matted hair, and crucially, they were former fire worshippers. Their whole practice revolved around fire rituals. Figures like Puranakassapa were among their leaders.
Ah, so they already had a deep connection to the idea of fire.
Yeah, exactly. And these weren't just fringe figures. The source notes they were highly respected, even teachers to King Bimbisara, the ruler of Magadha. So the Bhagavan, very skillfully, took their central symbol fire, burning, and reframed it. He basically said, you understand burning through external ritual. Let me show you the real burning, the internal fire of the defilements of lust, anger, and delusion, consuming your mind and causing suffering. It was a way to meet them where they were, using their own conceptual language, but pointing towards a much deeper psychological truth.
That's incredibly insightful teaching. Speaking their language to lead them to a different understanding. Did it work?
According to the source, spectacularly. It says that upon hearing this teaching, the minds of all 1,000 monks, as they became known, were extricated from all their defilements and let go of all attachments. Instantaneous liberation for the whole group is how it's presented. And this event had huge ripple effects. Seeing these highly respected Jatila become disciples and attain freedom convinced King Bimbisara, and, the source says, a massive retinue numbers like 12 Nahuta are mentioned, with many achieving high stages of insight themselves. This whole episode near Gaya essentially cemented the Buddha's teaching in the capital, Rajagaha.
Wow. That context really highlights the power and precision of this teaching. It wasn't just abstract, it was targeted, transformative. Okay, so if our entire experience is potentially burning with these fires of craving, aversion, and delusion, what's the way out? How does the source say we put out the fire?
The path, as described, begins with clear seeing, understanding this reality. The source quotes the teaching, Ivam pasa bhikkhave va ariyasavak, which means something like, seeing this, monk's a well-instructed noble disciple.
Seeing what exactly? Seeing the burning.
Seeing the whole process. Seeing that the senses, objects, consciousness, contact, feelings, the whole chain is subject to these fires and the suffering they bring. Seeing it clearly, not just intellectually, but with insight. And this clear seeing leads directly to the next crucial step, Nibbana.
Nibbana, what does that mean?
It's often translated as disenchantment, weariness, a sense of revulsion or turning away, but maybe dispassion captures some of it too. The source is very specific. The noble disciple becomes disenchanted with the eyes, kakusmipi nibbana.
Okay.
Disenchanted with visible forms, rupasupi nibbana. Disenchanted with eye consciousness, kakuvinyapi nibbana. With eye contact, kakusamfasepi nibbana. And even with the pleasant, painful, or neutral feelings that arise from eye contact. Yampida kakusamfasapakaya upajati vidayita nibbana.
So, disenchanted with the entire sequence related to seeing. And does this apply to the other senses too? Ears, nose, mind?
Yes, exactly. The same disenchantment arises regarding the ears and sounds, the nose and smells, the tongue and tastes, the body and touches, the mind and thoughts, the whole apparatus of experience.
Why disenchantment, though? It sounds a bit negative.
It's maybe better understood as a natural consequence of clear seeing. When you truly understand, with wisdom, that chasing pleasant sensations is inherently bound up with the unpleasant, that it's all fueled by these consuming fires, raga, dosa, moha, and ultimately leads to suffering. The automatic allure, the compulsive grasping, it starts to fade. It's not about hating the world, it's about seeing the stressful, impermanent, and ultimately uncontrollable nature of this conditioned experience, including our reactions to it. That seeing naturally loosens the grip. The fascination wanes.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's less about forcing yourself to dislike things and more about a wisdom-based letting go that happens when you see the burn inherent in clinging to them.
Precisely. Seeing the burning nature leads to this nibbana, this disenchantment or weariness. And that is the catalyst for the cooling process. The source describes the sequence beautifully. Nibbana virajati.
Meaning?
Through disenchantment or weariness, dispassion arises. Viraga, that's dispassion, detachment, the absence of raga, lust craving. This is the cooling. The fire loses its fuel. And then viraga vimutti. Through dispassion, one is liberated. Vimutti is liberation, freedom. When the fires of craving, aversion, and delusion are extinguished through dispassion, the burning stops. Freedom is realized. And this isn't just a concept. The source emphasizes the direct knowledge that arises. Vimuttasmi Vimuttiñāṇadassana. When liberated, the knowledge I am liberated arises.
You know you're free.
Yes. The Aryasvako, the noble disciple who reaches this point, understands directly. This is the end of jati, the end of birth, the end of this cycle of suffering. It is the end of the sublime life. The burden is finished. There is no other burden. It's described as a final, complete release, a total cooling down.
So pulling it all together, the fire sermon uses this intense metaphor of burning to describe our everyday experience fueled by our own internal fires of craving, aversion, and delusion. Seeing this reality clearly leads to disenchantment, which fosters dispassion, the cooling. And that dispassion is the doorway to liberation, to freedom from the whole cycle of burning and suffering. That's a powerful arc.
It is. And the source material, particularly the commentary, goes even further. It suggests this isn't always just a sudden flash, but often involves a more systematic process of purifying the mind. It describes a kind of path. Now, this isn't presented as instruction here, but as the source's description of a method linked to this teaching. It talks about practices like calming the mind, perhaps focusing it internally, which allows for a progressive dismantling of these defilements, these kilesas, at deeper and deeper levels.
So like peeling an onion, getting to the subtler layers of those fires?
Something like that. The commentary describes a sequence, sometimes involving experiences described as spheres or levels like Paññā, Sila, Samadhi, Paññā, Vimutti, Vimuttiñāṇadassana. It even mentions different levels of subtle existence or bodies one might experience or purify along the way, from human to celestial, up to what it calls Rupa Brahma, Arupa Brahma, and ultimately the Dhammakaya. And at these different stages, the source explains, specific defilements are targeted and eliminated. For example, things like overt covetousness, abhita, ill will, bhayapada, and wrong view, mijjhati, might dissolve relatively early. Then deeper levels of greed, lobha, anger, dosa, and delusion, moha, are tackled, maybe the Rupa Brahma level, though even subtler forms persist.
Still more layers.
Yes. Refined forms of passion, raga, aversion, dosa, and delusion, moha, are said to be dealt with at the Arupa level. And latent tendencies like the underlying tendency for sensual passion, kamaraganusaya, or ill will, paighanusaya, are eliminated upon reaching the Dhammakaya stage, as described in this source. It also maps this onto the classic stages of noble attainment, eliminating identity view, sakayati, doubt, vicikicca, and attachment to rituals, Sila paramasa, at the Sotapanna stage, weakening sensual passion and ill will at the Sakadagami stage, eliminating them completely at the Anagami stage. Until finally, at the Arhat stage, the source says even the subtle attachments to existence in form or formless realms, Ruparaga, conceit, mana, restlessness, udaka, and the root of ignorance, avijja, are all gone, completely extinguished.
That's an incredibly detailed map of inner purification. It really suggests this isn't just a philosophical idea, but is presented as a practical step-by-step process one can undertake to systematically cool down those intense fires.
Indeed. The source even defines the key terms magga, path, phala, fruit, and Nibbana in this context. The path, magga, is associated with the active process of reaching these stages, like the noble bodies, sotapanna, etc. A fruit, phala, is the resulting state of attainment at each level. And Nibbana itself, the ultimate goal, is described as the Dhamma sphere, viragatatu viragadhamma, the very element or principle of dispassion. It's presented as the unconditioned reality, the ultimate coolness that makes the Arahant state possible. The source uses analogies suggesting that just as certain types of people are drawn together, this state of viragatatu, pure dispassion, naturally attracts or is realized by those minds that have been completely purified of the defilements, the fires. It's the attainment of that pure, cool element itself.
An element of dispassion. That's a profound way to think about Nibbana. Not just an absence, but a presence of coolness, maybe? Peace? So bringing this all back to you, the listener, this ancient fire sermon, the Ādittapariyāyasūtra, really throws down a challenge, doesn't it? It asks us to look honestly at our everyday reality, every sight, sound, thought, feeling, and ask ourselves, Can we sense the underlying heat? Can we recognize the subtle or not so subtle burning of our own craving, our own aversion, our own moments of not getting it?
And the core message, consistently presented in the Source, is that seeing this burning, truly understanding its roots in raga, dosa, and moha, is the vital first step. That seeing fosters a natural disenchantment, a weariness, nibbana, with being caught in that cycle. From that weariness arises dispassion, viraga, the actual cooling of the fires. And that dispassion is the path to liberation, vimutti, to a state fundamentally free from that heat, that suffering. A state the Source insists is knowable, attainable.
It leaves us with a really potent question to mull over, I think. If our experience through senses and mind is constantly, potentially burning with these internal fires, what does it truly mean to find coolness, to find peace? Is the answer, as we often try, to frantically change the external world to stop it from burning us? Or is the path, as this ancient teaching powerfully suggests, about transforming our internal relationship to that experience? Cultivating dispassion, understanding, and finding liberation from the fires within. How do you experience the heat in your life, and what might that journey toward cooling down actually look like for you?